Now, here's your hosts of Truth Matters, Tom Donahue and Angeline Marie, seeking truth and promoting liberty.
Good day and welcome America and beyond. I'm Tom Donahue with my co-host Angeline Marie, and I'm filing this report for Truth Matters and, of course, Tom Donahue Reports. I am sticking to the Epstein files, even though Trump would admonish me and anyone that is talking about this because it's a hoax, remember? And he's been absolved of all his sins, whether it's sins of omission or sins of commission, as it relates to his relationship and what he knew and what he may have endeavored in or experienced in the Epstein universe. Remember, he was his best friend for more than 10 years. Well, I'll tell you, the hits just keep coming. There are so many allegations pointing towards the $1 million man, more than 1 million mentions, Donald Trump, and the Epstein files, which are now have been renamed. And I helped start the trend, I think, but I'm not the only one now that calls it the Trump-Epstein files or the Epstein-Trump files. I want to mention, and I think I'm going to have to bring this back, the Hall of Fame and the Hall of Shamers. But in the Hall of Shame is the Dwarf and the Creep. That's right, the Dwarf and the Creep from the Fox Follies, the Fox, the Five, and that's the little comedian, Gutfeld, and the Creep, which is Jeese Walters. So Greg Gutfeld, Jeese Walters, Hall of Shamers. This is what they had to say last week when they giggled and joked about Epstein as a sex rabbi and fixer. Unbelievable. And I've posted a TalkStream Live, and the article originated from Mediaite. How could anything relating to Epstein be funny? Now, if those on the left, Colbert and Kimmel, and if they were joking about Epstein in any way, shape, or form, and what he did, those heinous acts, they would be castigated and they would be rebuked. So I'm rebuking the two Hall of Shamers. And I've talked about those two before. And we'll probably have to do a little more investigating because I have covered this in prior podcasts. But back to the main meat on the bone. And I'm going to go to some news headlines. And here was something also from media. Yes, it's a cover-up. Epstein files, DOJ asking you to trust it. Yeah, just trust Pam Bondi, the bombastic one. I was going to say blonde bomber, but she bombed in the hearing. Remember that? We talked about bombastic, bonkers Bondi. Nancy Mace, South Carolina representative, she slams the DOJ over letter about the Epstein files release being complete. She said, no, they're missing names. Now, Bondi's trying to confuse and obfuscate when she released in this so-called final release, she put all like 300 plus names that mixed Trump in there with the Obamas and Clintons and anyone that had any mention. None of them had 1 million mentions like Trump. But they're not going to confuse the general populace. Even the MAGA faithful are falling away. The Representative Massey, who's been quite the crusader with Ro Khanna, Democrat, that have helped spearhead this, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene. But these two are the true heroes and crusaders that no matter what the name calling was, no matter what the threats were, they did not relent. They did not give in or give up. So Massey said on one of the news programs, he said, this is the Epstein administration, and Trump is still in the Epstein class. Yeah, that's right. Now, hilarious, hellish Hillary Clinton, as she spoke about the Epstein connections and the files, she said, we have no links. You may not specifically, but you were well aware that your husband was taking many flights and was very involved with Epstein. So this is not just picking on Donald Trump. I mean, the Clintons, I was one of the early exposers of the Clintons back in the 90s when I talked to the troopers with Troopergate, and we did, Whitewater, and we did the body count and all the missing people and the silenced people and the attacks on all the women accusers of Bill Clinton. So I've been there, done that. Hillary Clinton does say the GOP is using the Epstein probe to shield Trump. Well, Bannon, remember we talked about Bannon with him being the media coach and advisor to Epstein and the video that was released. And at first we didn't know exactly where this was discovered, but it was in the Epstein files. Certain people were able to get that and put it out there. And that's why I said, we discovered this on the internet and on YouTube. And so it actually did emanate from Epstein files. Now, Bannon was still, as we mentioned in the prior show, talking with Epstein right around the time of his second set of charges that came, later on, like in 2018, 2019. Bannon was still advising him. And at that time, besides, consulting with him in terms of how to craft the narrative, he confided in Epstein that he backed the 25th Amendment and the removal of Trump and how they could do that. And then even after this, we found out that he was conspiring with Epstein to try to bring down the Vatican. Yeah. I mean, now I had said that Kellyanne Conway and Steve Bannon were losers and leakers in the first administration, which I think I was proved right. Now, Kellyanne Conway did play a pivotal role in getting Donald Trump elected first time because her polling company and the polling data put him in the right spots in that final week that he was able to get over the finish line and beat Hillary Clinton. Well, beyond Trump's being implicated in some ways here, we now know that so-called Prince Andrew, one of the royals, he has now been arrested and has been charged. So it's looking like even the royals are going down. So if someone that close to the King of England, his brother, a prince, can be arrested and charged, why can we not be charging many culprits who are co-conspirators that paid secret agreements and paid fines? Why aren't those names prominently not only listed specifically, but why aren't charges being brought against them rather than paying Bondi and Cash Patel is chugging beers at the Olympics and jet setting to his young girlfriend in Tennessee rather than attending to these type of matters? And as I mentioned, that Bondi never apologized, didn't recognize the survivors or victims in the gallery, and is never given any updates. Trump has never met with any of them, shows no empathy whatsoever. It's a pretty dark day in America as it relates to the fact that we have an administration, for obvious reasons, at least to yours truly, for not taking action. Although they all said Trump is his son Don Jr., Dan Bongino, Pam Bondi, remember the client list on her desk? But they all said and all lobbied for this release when they were not officially in office. How things have changed. Now, speaking of body counts, remember I mentioned about the Clintons and Whitewater and all their murky dealings and people that were mysteriously vanishing. They're now saying, based on information from the Epstein files, that it was alleged that there were bodies buried at the ranch or in and around the ranch in New Mexico. I did allude to this before in a prior podcast or show, that there have been accusers that have contacted the FBI and other law enforcement agencies about Trump's wrongdoing. And of course, Epstein and Maxwell, but it now resurfaced, and you see some podcasters and some even MAGA influencers jumping on this. I looked at the information myself too. And again, we're just saying he is accused. We don't know for certain, but based on this headline, it said woman who credibly accused Trump of sex with a minor reportedly had her records removed from the Epstein files. So they were there and then they weren't there. And then there's been others that said that Trump was in the room when some activities went on. And then there's the $22,500 check that Epstein has posted, laid in various parts of his mansion, that talked about how Trump bought one of the girls. Remember when Trump used the language that Epstein stole some of his girls like they were property? Again, these are allegations that need to be investigated and see if they can be substantiated.
I'm an American veteran. I'm proud to have served this country. Helping veterans is something all Americans can participate in, and it's as simple as donating an old car that you have sitting around. When you call the Veteran Car Donation Program, they'll explain how their program works, and then arrange a time they can come and pick up your vehicle for free. Running or not, it doesn't matter. They take cars, trucks, motorcycles, or vans. Show your support by donating your car and get a tax deduction in the process. Call the Veteran Car Donation Program right now. They'll come and pick your car up for free, and you'll get a tax deduction in the process. Call the number we're about to give you right now. Thank you, and God bless America.
Call 800-925-1596. 800-925-1596. 800-925-1596. Call right now. 800-925-1596.
I have a friend, about 50, had a bad accident and couldn't go back to work. If you're between the ages of 49 and 63 and can't go back to your job because of a physical or mental disability, Social Security could pay you as much as $3,800 a month. If you or a family member is unable to work because of a disability, call the Social Security Disability Helpline. Our team will give you a free case review and explain to you how much money you're entitled to, and you won't pay anything unless we get you benefits. See if you or a family member is entitled to close to $45,000 a year in Social Security disability funds. Remember, this is not something for people over the age of 65. If you're under 65 and can't work, call now.
800-942-1395. 800-942-1395. 800-942-1395. That's 800-942-1395.
Welcome back. Tom Donahue, Angeline Marie. Truth matters, and it really does matter here. And we are staying on the Epstein trail, the files, the scandal, the cover-up, the conspiracy. And every week, it seems like these files and the deeper that the researchers, investigators, including yours truly and Angeline, delve, we find more and more and more arrows are pointing towards Trump's being implicated, at least to some degree. Angeline, you had a chance to listen to the report I filed, and I think I want to pick up with Amnesia Dan Bongino and Bannon, who betrayed Trump and betrayed the nation, and their ties to this as well.
Well, I just think that you're not going to have anybody who is connected to Trump say anything negative. I don't know if they've all been given orders not to say anything, but I just think you're not going to hear it publicly. In fact, I heard something interesting today because honestly, I don't really follow mainstream media much. And I heard on an alternative channel, Jay Dyer was being interviewed, and he was talking with the host, of course, about the Epstein files. And he made the comment that barely anything is being said on mainstream news about Epstein files. So,
well, it is, but not to this degree. And then, because I consume all media, okay? I know it's biased on both sides, and if people don't want to believe that, well, then they're not digging deep enough. They're not true They don't have a true investigative spirit and keeping an open mind. But MS Now, which was MSNBC, they are on the trail. And yes, it's politically partisan. All I care about is the truth. So wherever it comes from, I want to unhatch, and I want to rip it apart and find out what truly is there underneath. And then, of course, there's a lot of podcasters and media influencers, and there's a few hosts here and there, YouTube, et cetera. But it really is now the vanguard is not talk radio, which it once was, and that's why I entered the field of talk radio years ago. It is now social media, and it is streaming media, and it is podcasting and YouTube, et cetera. I'm really thankful that they've taken on the role that talk radio once was. Now talk radio are the apologists for the left and the right, and they are involved in being co-conspirators and covering up for the sins of each party. And it's really quite the shame. And when we look at this Steve Bannon, I mean, not only being media advisor and media counsel for Epstein after the first conviction and then the second, but he was conspiring, and this is actual factual from the Epstein files, with, of all people, Jeffrey Epstein, to remove Trump from office using the 25th Amendment. And they wanted to unseat, in many ways, remove the Pope. So they had a conspiracy against the Vatican, among other leaders. But here they were working together as a brain trust, which is just unbelievable. And then I talked about Amnesia Dan Bongino, and he's ripped for posturing as the Epstein files crusader with his buddy, the beer chugger, FBI director, taking flights to the Olympics. And they both signed off on this FBI investigation of Epstein and said there's nothing here and case closed.
Well, nothing shocks me. And you're going to, the more stuff that comes out, the more denial we're going to get from these guys. I don't watch Bannon. I have watched him in the past, but I think you and I had a discussion because I said, well, what is he saying? And to me, it's the elephant in the room. And I feel like these guys, including Bongino, are just ignoring it.
Well, they're not only ignoring it, they are covering it up. If you have access to all these files and you have access to the tapes that are now in the Epstein files, and he says that he absolutely committed suicide, these conspiracy theories he has debunked, and now we see the orange blob, we see the discrepancies in the reports, but Dan doesn't want to be asked any questions about these things. He just wants to cash in like Cash Patel at Fox News and Westwood One and through his advertisers and sponsors. But he doesn't want to be held in account for abysmal year at the FBI as deputy director.
Yeah. Well, it's just going to continue. And, there is one thing I want to say. First of all, I think the alternative media is doing a better job at reporting. A lot of these guys are actually going through this stuff and they're picking out, the gems and then they're reporting them.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I said, I don't know what the mainstream is doing, but from what I hear, they're not doing a really good job. But one thing I just want to say is I just feel that we do have to be careful in our reporting. I had come across a video this week with this quote unquote credible accuser. Now, first of all, I'm not saying that none of the victims are credible. I'm not saying that. We wouldn't be having this conversation if there were not credible people that were victims. But I just think we have to be careful because this credible accuser phrase went out from what I can tell to a blog post, a report that I saw in a blog post, and everybody else is picking it up, not knowing where they're thinking, they're under the assumption that
they're reading from the Epstein files. No, this woman and the Trump administration removed this from the files. It was in the files, minor details, and went to the FBI. FBI thought it was so serious that there were 4 different follow-up interviews. And it got squashed and then it's removed from the files. But there's other reports and other people that are saying Trump was in or around or near or involved. I'm not going to cover up in any way, shape, or form for Trump. And if Trump doesn't want to come out and defend himself, if Trump doesn't want to come out and simply state it's a hoax and he's absolved, then too bad.
Well, he's hurting himself right now, with his administration and the way they've handled this whole. Said the reported victim provided enough preliminary information to warrant a follow-up interview. Whether
it's credible or not, the fact is that it was reported to the FBI, and they did, they took the report, but they didn't do enough follow-up on this. And there are other arrows pointing in Trump's direction from other accusers. And we already know he has a history of sexual abuse with women, and that is a fact. And there's even a court case, but people can dispute whether they believe that to be legit or not. But the fact of the matter is, I've described a lot of circumstantial evidence that points to Trump, and now there's more specifics in the Epstein files, and I think there's going to be even more that comes out. And just today, it was reported from several different media sources that 53 missing Trump pages that have to do with accusations lodged against Trump. It just came out today in late February of 2026. So this is not by any means anywhere close to being over.
What do you think about these international arrests that are going on? They're not really coming out in some cases and saying that it had to do with victims that were sexually assaulted, but that they're focusing on other corruption.
No, it has to do with the fact that there are associations in when they held government positions with Epstein. And so it's being fully investigated. So you're right. Other countries are taking this much more seriously now. They could have done it before. Whereas sadly, this country, because we have no Justice Department now, we have no law enforcement at the federal level, it will not be thoroughly investigated, and it's case closed according to them.
I have a friend, about 50, had a bad accident and couldn't go back to work. If you're between the ages of 49 and 63 and can't go back to your job because of a physical or mental disability, Social Security could pay you as much as $3,800 a month. If you or a family member is unable to work because of a disability, call the Social Security Disability Helpline. Our team will give you a free case review and explain to you how much money you're entitled to, and you won't pay anything unless we get you benefits. See if you or a family member is entitled to close to $45,000 a year in Social Security disability funds. Remember, this is not something for people over the age of 65. If you're under 65 and can't work, call now.
800-942-1395. 800-942-1395. 800-942-1395. That's 800-942-1395.
For nearly 250 years, Americans have enjoyed a level of civility and prosperity. Wicked globalist operatives threaten it all. And the chaos around us is the result of an underlying spiritual war. See through the deception and discover the roots of the world's conflicts. A startling new book from the host of the Truth Seekers radio show, Soulless Society. Available on Amazon in softcover, Kindle ebook, and Audible. Visit www.soullesssocietybook.com.
Learn how thousands of smart homeowners are investing about $1 to avoid expensive home repair bills. John, a former non-customer, said, "My air conditioner broke and I had to spend $1,900 to fix it." Jeff, a customer, wrote, "My air conditioner broke and I got a new one at no out-of-pocket cost." Mary, a former non-customer, wrote, "My heating system stopped running. I had to spend $3,000 to get a new one." Lisa, a customer, wrote, "My heater stopped working. I got it fixed at no out-of-pocket cost. For about $1 a day, you can have all the major appliances and systems in your home guaranteed fixed or replaced. Call now. If the lines are busy, please call back."
Call the Home Warranty Hotline now at 800-238-9182. 800-238-9182. 800-238-9182. That's 800-238-9182.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now at 800-810-2191. 800-810-2191. 800-810-2191. That's 800-810-2191.
This is Tom Donahue for Truth Matters. Join me and Angeline Marie weekly Saturday nights as we shed light and insight on the controversies, cover-ups, and conspiracies. Visit the show website, truthmattersradio.net, truthmattersradio.net for show times, how to listen, and podcast downloads. That's truthmattersradio.net, truthmattersradio.net. And that's truthmattersradio.net.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You're listening to Truth Matters with Tom Donahue and Angeline Marie as we shed light and insight on the prevailing controversies, cover-ups, and conspiracies. We cover the political, cultural, monetary, media, and health sectors. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Truth Matters. So, Tom, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, I did an Epstein report on Zorro Ranch, and that's when I was talking about his transhumanism activities. And if you recall, I talked about how he wanted to impregnate women on this ranch. And the latest file dump has allegations that it maybe just wasn't transhumanism, but also there are allegations pointing to murder. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I want to give a little background on this ranch. Epstein purchased Zorro Ranch in '93 from a former New Mexico governor, Bruce King. It's 26,700 square feet. It's a hilltop mansion with a private runway, hangar, helipad, firehouse, 7-bay heated car garage. And according to the newly dumped Epstein files, what appears to be underground structures. One email had some pictures, and they labeled the pictures underground tunnel. And there were also documents that speculate that this property has 6 levels. An additional finding is that he was also leasing an additional 1,200 acres of state land that surrounded his property. There was also revealed a guest list of those people that went to Zorro Ranch. Some of the powerful and influential people were Woody Allen, Robert Redford, Reid Hoffman, the LinkedIn co-founder, Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley billionaire, and also former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson. Now, if you remember back during Ghislaine Maxwell's federal trafficking trial, there were multiple Epstein accusers that stated under oath that they were actually abused at this property. So just keep that in mind. In July 2019, Epstein's arrested New York on the federal sex trafficking charges. What this led to was New Mexico Attorney General Hector Balderas opened a state-level criminal investigation. His office started to make contact with victims. They compiled police reports, recorded witness interviews, and documented correspondence between New Mexico state agencies. And then this Balderas requested that a federal asset forfeiture tool be used to even seize the ranch based on these claims. That same month, in July 2019, as he's putting together this case, and he all of a sudden receives a directive from the U.S. Attorney General's office for the Southern District of New York, and they tell him to cease his investigation into the sex trafficking related Epstein claims. They told him the reason why is that the federal government was also leading an active multi-jurisdictional prosecution and that a parallel state investigation might compromise it. The person, interestingly, who issued the order was our U.S. Attorney Maureen Comey, the daughter of the former FBI Director James Comey. So Balderas takes everything that he's compiled, all the reports, all the, victim interviews, all the documentation, and he forwards it over to the Federal Department of Justice thinking that they're going to do something with this. Now, that's in July 2019. The next month, in August 2019, Epstein's found dead in his cell. As we go on and look at more of what was released in this latest dump, it appears that federal case died when Epstein died. So the Epstein files now that are being released confirm that in December 2019, an email from the prosecutors to the executors of the Epstein estate, they plainly state that the federal agents have not searched the New Mexico property. So in this latest file dump, there's documentation showing feds admitting that they never searched the New Mexico property, the same property that Balderas was looking into in his investigation, the same property that the feds told him lay off. Don't look into this, nothing to see here. Again, now remember, Maureen Comey was serving as U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. They were the very office that's supposedly prosecuting the Epstein case when they issued Balderas to halt his investigation. To sum up what I've said so far, so what the record shows is she ordered a sitting state attorney general to stand down, and she accepted his evidence, and her office confirmed that they were interviewing victims, but no search warrants were ever issued for Zorro Ranch. No charges beyond those already filed against Epstein were ever brought. Epstein dies, and it seemed that whole case died when he died. Now, there's an anonymous email from this latest file dump that has allegations of murder. So in November 2019, 3 months after Epstein's death, this radio host in New Mexico, his name was Eddie Aragon, and he receives an encrypted email. And the sender claims to be a former Zorro Ranch employee. The email alleged that 2 foreign girls had died at the ranch by strangulation during a rough sexual assault, and he claimed that their bodies were buried in the hills outside of the property, and that this was all done by orders given by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, the sender of this email also claimed that he had videos taken from Epstein's home, and that these videos allegedly showed sexual abuse of minors. And he was using this as sort of as insurance material. Now, he said in exchange for the videos and the location of these burials that he would want in return 1 Bitcoin, which back then it was only worth about $8,000. Now, the radio show host said that he felt like this communication was the real deal. So he ends up forwarding this email to the FBI within days of getting it. Now, the latest file dump says that a 2021 report confirms that the FBI did receive a follow-up report that the man, Aragon, who was the radio host, had indeed visited an FBI field office to report that email. Now, again, there were no charges filed, no search of the property was conducted, and the Justice Department has cautioned that some released documents contain unverified or false claims. Now, this past month, the New Mexico Land Commissioner, Stephanie Garcia Richard, discovered an email while she was searching the Epstein files on her own. And this email came to her attention about this federal investigation that had fallen through the cracks. So it prompted her to immediately call on state and federal officials to fully investigate. And her letter to the Justice Department has triggered what has since become a full state reopening of this investigation. So, well, where it stands now, this estate no longer is owned by Jeffrey Epstein. It was sold at auction in 2023, and the current owner had a spokesperson that said that they were willing to help, that they would receive full cooperation if the feds ever want to look into this. He said local, state, or federal. No local, state, or federal have ever requested access to the property, but if they do, when they do, they'll receive full cooperation. Now, this is what actions are being taken now, especially in terms of New Mexico. So the New Mexico legislature has now approved a bipartisan commission, and it's a 4-member panel of the State House reps that have subpoena power. They've already held their first meeting in February, and they're saying that they are going to visit Zorro Ranch. Also, the New Mexico Attorney General is now Raul Torres. He's reopened the state's criminal investigation, and his office has requested immediate access to the complete, unredacted federal case file and is coordinating with this commission panel that was just formed. And then also there are state lawmakers in New Mexico that are pushing to extend New Mexico's statute of limitations for childhood sex assaults, because this would allow Epstein's surviving victims to pursue civil action. So that's where this all stands right now. And of course, still at the federal level, the Justice Department has maintained it found no evidence of criminal conduct beyond the charges already filed against Epstein and Maxwell. Unbelievable. And so what we have is a state attorney general that built a case, but then a federal prosecutor whose father ran the FBI told him to stand down, stop investigating. He then hands over everything to the feds thinking they're going to act on it. The feds confirm in writing that they never searched the property. This is what just recently came out in the Epstein file drop. And the case collapsed when Epstein died, and the evidence has never been acted upon, and the ranch then was quietly sold. But here we are years later, and finally this commission with subpoena power is planning on going to the property, and they're going to start asking questions that should have been asked back then. And so Tom, I'd like to hear your opinion on this, and we'll be back momentarily on Truth Matters.
For nearly 250 years, Americans have enjoyed a level of civility and prosperity. wicked globalist operatives threaten it all. And the chaos around us is the result of an underlying spiritual war. See through the deception and discover the root of the world's conflicts. A startling new book from the host of the Truth Seekers radio show, Soulless Society. Available on Amazon in softcover, Kindle ebook, and Audible. Visit www.soullesssociety.book.com.
Learn how thousands of smart homeowners are investing about $1 to avoid expensive home repair bills. John, a former non-customer, said, "My air conditioner broke and I had to spend $1,900 to fix it." Jeff, a customer, wrote, "My air conditioner broke and I got a new one at no out-of-pocket cost." Mary, a former non-customer, wrote, "My heating system stopped running. I had to spend $3,000 to get a new one." Lisa, a customer, wrote, "My heater stopped working. I got it fixed at no out-of-pocket cost." For about $1 a day, you can have all the major appliances and systems in your home guaranteed fixed or replaced. Call now. If the lines are busy, please call back.
Call the Home Warranty Hotline now at 800-238-9182. 800-238-9182. 800-238-9182. That's 800-238-9182.
Welcome back, Tom Donahue, Angeline Marie, Truth Matters, final segment. And every segment this week has been devoted to the Epstein files, the Epstein scandal, cover-up, conspiracy. And I was glad that you, Angeline, filed your report that related to the Zorro Ranch and what's going on in New Mexico. And it's so timely because of the state investigation that seemingly is much more professional and more dedicated than the feds were when they had the opportunity, if you will, in terms of the crime scene. We certainly have that here, don't we?
Yes. And, you know, when I did the last report, I was so focused on the transhumanism, and that made sense to me that it would be this huge remote, you know, property where they could do things like that. But then it really hooked me in when I saw this allegation of these bodies being buried on site. And it's funny because I gave a quick overall sketch of just how big this property was in my report, where I talk about it's, you know, over 26,000 square foot hilltop mansion. But, you know, as I go back over, I also mentioned underground structures and that they had photographs that talked about underground tunnels. And when you think about that, Tom, you know, what do you think they're doing in these underground tunnels? And so I wonder, you know, what is it that they're doing down there? And so I just thought that was all interesting. And then the guest list, you know, Woody Allen and Robert Redford. But I think the best part, the part that I didn't realize, is that the state had already started a case and then it was squashed by none other than Maureen Comey. Interesting.
Speaking of Jim Comey's daughter, that was the U.S. attorney, that successful prosecution, a conviction against, you know, we have to give her a little credit on that. And there was a lot of information that was obtained in that investigation. Then, strangely enough, she's fired. And Trump knew all along that was Comey's daughter. But it was when the Epstein files, you know, heated up, that's when she got fired. But no one's called her in, although there's now talk this week that they may subpoena her and bring her in to find out what she knew and what really happened with this investigation, and also the prosecution and the conviction. But yeah, so they told the New Mexico authorities that, you know, they've got this, you know, they've got this handled. And in fact, they didn't search the place. They didn't investigate at all, did they? In relating to the Epstein cases.
No, and I think, you know, up until this time, now it looks like this commission that they formed is going to go. They're making it a point to go there. But it is unbelievable to me that with everything that went down with him, why wouldn't the feds go there to see what was going on? Or either that or they have been there and they're lying about it. I don't know. But I thought that was unbelievable and very unusual in such a high profile case, especially when you're talking about a remote area with sexual assault victims.
Yeah. So now it's reported in the Epstein files that there was an allegation which they're following up on, at least on the state level. The feds still have no interest, but then again, we have no Justice Department now. But they are trying to find out where these bodies may be, if in fact they are buried in and around that property. And my understanding is there was a radio host, Aragon, that received emails regarding sexual abuse of minors. Tell us more about that.
Well, what happened was this radio host, Eddie Aragon, gets this email. And it says that there's 2 foreign girls that died on this ranch by strangulation. And then he goes on and says, and I also have video, and there was other stuff with minors, and he had all this proof. And so this is all, of course, allegedly. And so this host says, this might be credible. I better do something with this. So he brings it to the FBI. But honestly, the only follow-up I have seen since he did that was it says a 2021 FBI report just confirmed that Aragon had, in fact, visited an FBI field office. But it never seemed to come to anything once again. Still, there's no charges that were filed and no search of that property still hadn't been conducted by the feds or the state or the local. So hopefully that's all going to change now that they have this new attorney AG.
Yeah, and they have that commission. And so,
right.
Yeah, I trust the state much more than the feds, obviously, because it sounds like they're trying to actually, get to the bottom of this. And that's extremely important.
Yeah, I'm just impressed that from the beginning, the state has been very instrumental in trying to bring this to light, but it's just that it kept getting squashed by the feds. So it looks like the new attorney general is doing just that as well. So that's good.
Yeah. Now, this ranch, it was alleged that it was for research and people could gather and discuss all these scientific theories and inventions and all that. What did you find with the alleged purpose behind him purchasing this property and inviting these guests?
Well, I haven't found anything. Honestly, I was focusing on the allegations, the radio host guy, and the Comey connection, and especially all the things that are still outstanding that were never done. Nothing was ever done with all the evidence that the first AG collected. So I was focused on that. But now that you bring that up, I'm going to look into that, Tom, because that would be interesting. Now, whether or not I'll ever get to the truth, that remains
true. It just came out this week, beyond other things that we brought up in the earlier segments for this program, is that Epstein had many, many storage lockers all across the United States that they're now trying to locate and trying to unseal what's in these storage lockers. And the other thing that has not been brought up in any of the Epstein files that I'm aware of is where are all these videotapes? Because it shows the pictures in the Epstein files. It shows all these monitors where they did say that, especially in New York at the mansion, he was monitoring all the rooms and all the activities, and they were recorded. And I remember when Comey and the U.S. Attorney's Office raided that mansion, they were bringing out boxes and boxes and boxes of videotapes, what he was doing in terms of surveillance. So it'll be interesting to see as we continue digging and delving deeper, where are these tapes?
Right. And the only thing I can say is they did say it's the most secretive of all of the properties that he had. And although he had his own property, he was actually leasing another 1,200 acres of surrounding state land property around the ranch. And then when the state land commissioner in New Mexico found out that he was not using the state land for ranching or agriculture. They pulled the lease from him. So that's also interesting. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, I don't know, maybe they were under the impression, or maybe he filed that he was going to do agriculture or ranching there.
Well, maybe he realized there were too many people getting suspicious of what was going on in both mansions in Palm Beach and New York. And then of course, he had the island. So I'm not sure if the island property came before the ranch, but in terms of timeline. But he had all these places that he could take people to, whether it was for so-called academic and research purposes or for monkey business or financial dealings. You know, he was having guests and victims that were detained and trafficked in all these locations. And now we're thinking that it's possible that there's buried bodies too. So this just keeps getting darker by the day.
It certainly is. It'll be interesting to see what else they find once they finally get out there.
I had no idea that it would take on a life in and of itself. Every day there's something new.
I know, it's like watching a multi-part movie every week.
Well, it's like watching a Netflix documentary that keeps going on and on and on. And, well, we're finished for this week. More to come next week. Tom Donahue, Angeline Marie, Truth Matters.
Here's a real-life story that affects 50% of all of us out there. It's called divorce. If you've gotten divorced and now you're struggling to pay your bills and your credit card debts are completely out of control, you need to call this special debt relief hotline right now. We help people with all kinds of money problems caused by different life challenges, a divorce, a job loss, even heavy medical bills. All these life events can sometimes financially stress you out and cause you to get out of control. We help people get their lives back by showing them ways to consolidate and reduce their debt, in some cases for a fraction of what they owe. If your credit card balances are more than $10,000, call us and learn how to reduce your credit card bills and monthly payments now. Here's our number.
Paid for by Debt.com. Call now at 800-810-2191. 800-810-2191. 800-810-2191. That's 800-810-2191.
For every puppy purchased from a pet store or a breeder, a homeless dog at an animal shelter loses the chance of ever going for a romp in the park, chasing a ball, or feeling secure in a real home. Dogs and cats in shelters are waiting for someone kind to come along. So if you or anyone you know is ready for the responsibility of giving an animal a lifelong home full of patience, understanding, and respect, please adopt, don't shop. Visit PETA.org to learn more.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You're listening to this week's episode of Truth Matters with me, Tom Donahue, and my co-host, Angeline Marie. Our weekly radio show is heard on many radio stations, streaming online, and podcast by demand. We replay our show here at TalkStream Live, TalkRight, Alt Media, K-Star Talk Radio Network, and of course, you can always find out more at TomDonahueReports.com. That's TomDonahueReports.com. This is Tom Donahue for Truth Matters. Join me and Angeline Marie weekly Saturday nights as we shed light and insight on the controversies, cover-ups, and conspiracies. Visit the show website, truthmattersradio.net, truthmattersradio.net for show times, how to listen, and podcast downloads. That's truthmattersradio.net, truthmattersradio.net. And that's truthmattersradio.net.